Hello and welcome back to Tachikawa. You are listening to Sakamichi Nights. We had a week off last week because we were busy with our 3rd anniversary event. Daniel Bellamy, did you enjoy our 3rd anniversary double weekend?
Yeah, it was great. What's not to like about it? It was fantastic.
There was a lot of good beer. We had a Sakamichi tap takeover. Every single tap, Sakamichi.
Love those guys.
And also released a new beer, the 3rd anniversary IPA. It was really busy the whole time.
It was.
We had a fantastic week. Thanks to everyone who came along for that. And if you didn't come, you're dead to us forever. How was your week this week?
Yeah, it's been great. Picking up where we left off. Tuesday was a public holiday.
Right.
Pretty fancy one.
Vernal equinox.
Yeah, pretty exciting.
Did you equi that nox?
It seemed like, I didn't. I was here working, but it seemed like people were out to nox the equi pretty hard. It was packed in here.
It did seem that way, yes.
I'm not sure what the driver of that. It's just a day off, isn't it? Right. The Emperor's birthday. It was also real party atmosphere in here, and I didn't see anybody doing anything to really celebrate the Emperor's birthday. They were just getting drunk.
The Emperor was doing a few shots.
Well, in here.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice. I guess I wouldn't recognize him, I suppose, if he came in.
Right. No, he was with a bunch of friends. They brought a bottle of tequila. They were in the corner doing some shots. Surprised you didn't notice.
We should have put a stop to that. Yeah, that seems unreasonable. We sell alcohol. We have a problem here that I would like to get your feedback on.
Right.
Okay, are you prepared?
I'm ready. I'm always ready to give unsolicited advice. Although you're about to solicit it, so let's do it.
Yeah. You do not want to give it now?
No,
now
yes.
that I'm asking for it.
I will allow you to solicit this advice.
I don't think I'm overselling it to say that the bicycle traffic on the sidewalk out front of our store exceeds the vehicular mayhem included in all of the Mad Max movies combined. I don't think that's hyperbolic at all.
No, I would agree with 100% of that.
Today the gas man cameth. That sounded weird. Today the gas man cometh. Is it getting better?
Keep going.
So the gas man came to deliver a tank of CO2 as he does.
Yep.
And he brought it in, and I gave him the old one, and then I paid for it. And then when he, and I'm sure you know, I know as well, that when you step onto that sidewalk, you have to look both ways. Sometimes we're unloading things. There's bikes going up and down there, and they're big, heavy electric mamacharis with 8 people on them. They cannot stop. And the what is it? The velocity of them,
the momentum.
The momentum is large, and it's going to put you in a world of pain. So he didn't know this or forgot this. I don't really know, but he basically stepped off of our kind of front stoop area without looking, and right in the path of a lady on a bike. And they had a big moment. She slammed on the brakes. She kind of laughed about it. And he, while kind of apologizing and saying, "Excuse me," I said to her, he kind of pirouetted away from her towards his truck, directly into the path of another bike, a guy on a bike coming the other direction.
Right.
And had basically the exact same thing happen. So these people managed to stop in time. They were sole occupants on these bikes, sole riders on these bikes.
Yeah, solo easy riders.
Yes. No children, no, other family members attached to the bike anywhere. Yeah. So I feel like that's how disaster was averted in this particular case. But it could have been terrible. He's not a young man. He seems pretty hale and hearty, but he's not a young man. He could have been absolutely knocked off his feet.
The gas man got some years on him.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So anyway, what's your take on this problem? Is there anything we can do? And I'm not talking about things realistically that we can do, but how would you solve this problem? And we're cyclists, I appreciate that cyclists gonna cycle.
Yep.
I don't think they should be on the sidewalk personally, especially not with the speeds people go. But how would you deal with this problem to basically save the gas man's life?
Yeah.
That's what we're working at here.
I agree that if you're going to be on the pavement, then you do need to be watching out for pedestrians. Sort of the duty of care shifts. When you're in the road, the cars are going to be watching out for you. Right. When you're on the pavement, you've got to be watching out for the pedestrians. For a solution here, what about a jump? If we put a sick jump on both sides of our shop, people could catch some air over the gas man.
Right.
As you say, He's very hale and hearty, but he's not the tallest of guys. I think like 5'8" or so.
Yeah.
They could clear
Something like
that. These mama cherries go pretty quickly, the electric ones.
Some of them really quickly.
That is kind of the issue here, isn't it? So, yeah, if we put like some ramps or something on both sides, what do you think?
That's great. That's actually... I had a very similar idea, but on a smaller scale. I was thinking speed bumps.
Right.
But I like... My idea was like a tiny jump that would slow them down.
Right.
But I like your idea of a bigger jump.
It's going to speed them up.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's going to make them speed up if they want to clear it, right? Clear it cleanly. That's pretty good.
I always enjoy the scene in film when there's a car chase and it comes to one of those bridges that goes up. What are these called? Drawbridges? It's not a drawbridge because it goes up on both sides. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
right?
I do.
The raising bridge.
Raised bridge, yeah.
And the goodies have to like slam it over the bridge, and they just about manage to make it, and then the baddies don't. Hopefully they go into the river, and if not, maybe they're sort of hanging over the edge of the bridge.
Right.
What if we had a similar kind of raising bridge out here? Right. So when the gas man does arriveth, you push a button under the bar, and they start rising up. Right. So that's what makes the jumps.
I was going to say, it is the jumps. Yeah, right. Okay,
They're
not a
not
bridge.
there normally.
Right.
But the jumps kind of rise up to allow people to leap over him.
Right. That sounds pretty good.
Well, get on that then.
You should probably have some kind of remote, I guess. You know, I every now and then when you're watching TV, you come across the most ridiculous stuff that you never knew existed. And sometimes I see these things and then I can never find it again. There's two examples of this that stick out in my mind. But at one point I saw... It's always at some weird sports competition, right?
Right.
At one point, I saw a competition for rolling cars. And basically, these people had these little shitbox cars, and like a little hatchback kind of thing, and they would ride at a ramp. But they took the ramp with only like the wheels on the left-hand side, for example. So that that side would lift up, and then they would cut the wheel hard into the ramp, and then turn the car like towards the end of the ramp, basically, and just try and roll it.
Right.
And the challenge was skipping a stone, basically. How many times can you roll this car? And this was a competition. This like they had judges and rules, and clearly this was things that people had done before. They had some technique and skill. It was fantastic. So anyway, I really hope that like with your idea that it would be like an amateur version of that out front.
We're going to be rolling some bicycles outside.
Yeah. I mean, it won't take long for people to learn their lesson.
What was the other thing that you saw in television that you couldn't believe existed?
This one, less that I couldn't believe existed, but I saw it once and I was completely engrossed and I've never seen it since. Are you aware of the basketball game Horse, the backyard basketball game called Horse?
You got to make a shot and then the other one has to make the same shot.
That's
right.
Yeah.
You get the letter.
That's right,
sure.
Yeah. So I saw basically that. It was Horse, but it was trick shot pool.
Okay.
So I do a trick shot. It has to be easy enough for me to nail it, because if I don't nail it, then you get to do your own shot, right? But hard enough or complicated enough that you can't do it as a trick shot pool professional. And it was amazing because you realize how much of this is just technique at some point. Like everything else that happens, like there's a lot of flourish that goes on with the tricks. There's a lot of flim-flammery. But at the end of the day, striking the ball, there's techniques to that. And all of these guys know these techniques.
Right.
So even though I've never done your trick before, I look at it and go, yeah, fine, whatever. I hit it here with this much force.
Do you get to watch the other person do the trick? So you can
what,
see
you
how
just
they
listen
hit the
to
ball?
them? What do you think? Like,
Yeah, like you're not put in like an isolation booth and then you're brought out and say, okay, here's the trick that they just nailed.
No, you have to watch. Yeah, you watch them
it.
do it. Yeah, for sure.
So you could just see how they hit the ball, right, and then try and copy it.
Well, I mean, I've seen a lot of people hit pool balls, and I can't copy it at all for the life of me. So I imagine there's some kind of skill involved. Yeah, it was incredible. It was engrossing. It might have helped that I was under the influence of substances at the time, but it was completely engrossing. And,
were you in college at the time? It sounds like the kind of thing you'd find on TV when you're in college.
No, I was in Thailand actually at the time.
Right.
Anyway, it was absolutely incredible, and I've never seen that format before or since.
I think I know what you're talking about, and it's a sport called Thai trick balls. If you Google that, you should be able to find what you're looking for. We're not here to talk about Thai trick balls, though, on this podcast. What are we here to do, Daniel Bellamy?
We're here to celebrate beer.
That's right. And we have a bit of a curveball, a Thai curveball for you this week, because we're going to be drinking one beer, but then celebrating a different beer.
Ooh.
We'll be prepared for this one. So this last week, we released our latest beer, which is called Mount Crushmore. But we don't actually currently have it on tap because there's too much other good beer on tap. So we're going to be drinking a different beer that we have in cans and then maybe talking about both of them. How does that sound to you?
It sounds complicated.
Needlessly convoluted.
Yeah.
That's what you're here for. All right, well, why don't we bring out the first beer that we will be drinking today? So we're back and we're drinking something called TDH Thank You DIPA from Uchu Brewing. Thank you to the customer who brought this beer in for us.
Yeah.
I think it's wonderful that we sell beer to people and then people give beer to us.
It's unexpected perk of the job.
Yeah, but something that I am definitely in favor of. Before we get into the beer itself, maybe there are a few acronyms here or initialisms that are probably very obvious to some people, but do cause some confusion to some other customers.
Right.
So we'll start with TDH. What does TDH mean?
It's obviously Thai double-handed.
Yes,
Not...
that's good. I was kind of asking for that, I suppose. What does TDH actually mean?
It means triple dry hopped.
Okay, and what is dry hop?
Dry hopping is when you add hops to the fermenting beer or the fermenting wort when it's in the fermentation vessel, the tank. So after you've produced the wort, you've boiled your grains and whatnot, you transfer it into a fermentation vessel, and then it sits there with the yeast in it, kind of doing its thing for a few weeks. And during that time, you can add hops to it. And adding hops at this point primarily is going to give it a lot of the aroma from the hops, right? You're not going to get a ton of bitterness out of the hops at this point, which is why it's done. You get aroma and flavor from the hops, but not bitterness so much.
Exactly, yeah. So it's done on the cold side. We're not boiling these hops, so we're not really extracting very much bitterness out of it. There is a little bit that comes out, but not really very much. Somebody the other day asked me a really good question. Why is it called dry hopping? Surely the hops get wet, but then all of the hops get wet. Like the hops that we put in on the hot side aren't wet. They're also dry.
Sure.
I didn't have an answer for this, and I still don't. And I think this requires more research. Right. Why is dry hopping called dry hopping? Answers on a postcard, please. So it's a TDH, triple dry hopped, DIPA. What is a dipper?
Double IPA.
There we go. What does that mean?
It means higher alcohol than like a regular IPA. Regular IPA, to my mind, 5.5 to, let's say, 6.9%, 7%, something like that.
Interesting.
Double is higher than that.
So our third anniversary IPA is a double IPA.
Well, the boundaries are constantly getting pushed, aren't they?
Right.
Like, I think 7.4 probably would have been... I think initially it was just like IPA and Imperial IPA. And Imperial was just anything over, like the 7-ish. Yeah, the strong one. And then, again, the boundaries kept getting pushed. So we decided we needed to subdivide these categories a little bit more. So we went into double and triple IPA. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. What do you think? 5.5 to 7.5, something like that? 5.5 to 7?
Yeah.
Over 7.5 is certainly double territory.
I think so, yeah. Once you go past 8%, that's double. And then, of course, you get into the TIPA sphere after that, the triple IPA, which is stronger even than that. And then QIPA?
The quads.
The quad IPA. So even more grain, meaning even more alcohol, and then probably even more hops to balance out that alcohol and that sweetness. So TDH, triple dry hopped, thank you. Double IPA, so it's stronger than a regular IPA. This one is 8.5%. What do you think of the beer?
I think that sometimes when you, I feel like this beer, we talked about pushing boundaries just now, and I feel like this beer and Uchu in general, they're hot on pushing boundaries, and pushing boundaries in the direction of like, how much hops can we jam into this beer? Like how much can we put into it before it becomes undrinkable, before it becomes unpalatable? Let's find out where that line is. I'm not saying this one is past that line or anything, but there's a lot of hops in this, and they're doing this, I think, more than maybe anybody else in Japan is. I think even West Coast Brewing and some of their really hoppy stuff is probably more restrained than Uchu is. But this one's still quite drinkable, still quite enjoyable. It's got a hell of a hop punch to it. You get a ton of kind of citrusy, juicy character on the nose. It's completely opaque, like a glass of grapefruit juice, pulpy grapefruit juice. And then you drink it, and it's a real hop punch. Almost like like a bit of a sharp bite to it from the hops, I think. I don't know. It's a really fun beer to drink. We've had a lot of beers on here where I go, I love this beer. I don't want to have more than one of them. Right. And I feel like this is that. Like, it's a really fun, interesting beer. There's a ton of hops in it, and you can tell. But I wouldn't have more than one of them because it is, it's going to blow out your palate, I think. Like, you need to have a glass of water after this before you go on to something else.
Have a glass of water and some crackers to balance yourself out. Yeah. It is surprisingly crushable, dare I say it, for an 8.5% beer. There are a lot of hops in there. You get, as you say, huge hop aroma on the nose, very juicy, very citrusy, and then a big punch of hop aroma on the palate as well. Very pleasant, very nice beer, I think. But we are splitting one small can, and that's probably enough for going on with. Do have some other Uchu stuff in the fridge right now, don't we? To digress just for a moment. The Limit Break Citra.
Right.
This is them doing the same kind of thing, right? Where they keep trying to see how much hops they can put into a single beer.
Yeah.
And they're pushing it further and further each time. Is this the third Limit Break?
This is, version 3 of Limit Break Citra. They tout this one on the top of the can. It has $DH. What do you think that means?
Yeah, who knows how many times they dry hop this beer. I guess they just kept doing it until they figured we cannot dry hop this
some kind
anymore.
of randomizing, like rotating schedule where no one knew who else had been dry hopping.
Right.
No one actually knows how many times it was dry hopped.
Just a big bucket of Citra pellet hops next to the fermenter, and whenever you go by, you just grab a shovel and shove some in.
Right. I think they just had like a massive doser with like, some obscene amount of hops in it, and everybody in Uchu had a button,
right,
like on their key fob, something like that. And whenever they pushed it, it would just dump hops in it. That would be the way to do it. Then no one would know how many times it was dry hopped.
Yes, that would certainly be a way to do that.
The way to do that.
Mm-hmm. This isn't actually the beer that we are here to talk about today, though.
Neither of those are.
Neither of those beers are. We're going to talk about our latest release, which is a mountain IPA. We're coming to that in due course. A mountain IPA that we made together with our friends at Takao Mountain House. Mm-hmm. Hi, Derek, if you're listening. What kind of beer is this? How would you describe this beer? Not having it in front of you right now. Let's slip into Dan's mind palace for a moment. Shoes at the door.
Nobody wants this.
Here's your robe. Up the stairs. Into the beer
bean
parlor.
Bags, lava lamps, tubes.
Everything made of pink bubble gum in here.
Do you want to know my take on Mount Crushmore? Or do you want to know my take what a mountain IPA is?
Well, we'll come back to that. Let's talk about Mount Crushmore first. Did we even say the name? It's called Mount Crushmore.
We didn't. Yeah, sorry, I blew
This is one of those beers where we came up with the name and then had to figure out, okay,
we got to make a beer.
That's so good, we have to figure out a beer that is going to go with this. And so Mountain IPA, it's called Mount Crushmore. It's crushable. It's a mountain IPA.
Takao Mountain House.
Maybe Takao Mountain House.
See how it all comes together.
What do you think of Mount Crushmore?
I enjoyed it quite a lot. I'm a fan of the style. It's what our friends at Gnomecraft generally call a modern IPA, which means it's going to have a fruity, juiciness of a hazy IPA, but when you drink it, you're going to get a bitter snap to it as well, a bitter bite or bitter backbone in there as well. And I feel like Mount Crushmore delivers on that. I also think that, we talk about things being crushable, as Chris Poole likes to say, and this is called Mount Crushmore, so obviously we're playing on that. And I feel like that beer very much is, like, thinner is not the way to describe it, but it's... we have Hop Volcano on now, and Hop Volcano is a big, it's pretty big, solid, meaty, fruity, hazy IPA. Meaty in the sense of
it's full bodied.
Yes, that's what I mean. Yeah, not that it is meaty, but
there was no actual meat used in the production of that beer.
Yeah, unlike the rest of our beers.
Yes.
But by comparison, I think that Mount Crushmore is a little more summery to me. I feel like it's a little more sessionable or crushable, I guess, than Hop Volcano. I think Hop Volcano is very crushable as well, but I think Mount Crushmore leans a little bit lighter. Crushmore is 6.2 as well, right? Hop Volcano is 6.6, if I'm off the top of my head. I'm pretty sure that's correct.
I think that is correct. I'm glad you noticed that, actually, because that was deliberate. Haze Craze Hop Volcano used quite a lot of wheat and quite a lot of flaked oats in it. When we drink hazy IPAs, sometimes what people are looking for is what's called a soft, pillowy mouthfeel.
Yep.
Right. So you need lots of unfermented sugar in there and lots of other dextrins and things to give it that full-bodied, pillowy mouthfeel. But for the Crushmore, I deliberately dialed a lot of that back because I wanted it to be lighter and juicier, better suited for crushing on the deck, sitting outside. Best enjoyed outside, I think is how we described it.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that came through, actually. The hops we used were American Noble Citra, American Noble Mosaic, classic combination, as well as Strata and Sabro, which I think gives a kind of a tropical nose.
Yeah.
Get quite a lot of pineapple out of it. And then a very juicy, citrusy, tropically full flavor to it as well.
I like both Strata and Sabro. Not to go back to Gnomecraft to hit them up twice in one episode, but they made their single IPA series is called Hop Name Drift, and the one they did with Strata Drift, I think is the best single hop IPA I have ever had. It was complex and flavorful and delicious and really, really fantastic. So ever since having that beer, I've been pretty keen on Strata hops and putting them in things. And Sabro as well. Sabro turns up in, I know it's a kind of a polarizing hop. Some people really don't like the flavor of it. Comes across kind of mango and coconutty sometimes, I think.
What's not to like about mango and coconut?
I know, right? But I know that for some people they don't care for it. But it's turned up in a lot of beers. The beers that I've drunk and gone, this is delicious. What's in this? And Sabro has popped up on that occasion a few times. So both of those are hops that I appreciate in this kind of beer.
Yeah, and they combine to give it that juicy and tropical fruit flavor with a hint of pineapple, maybe a touch of coconut on the back end as well. I know you do like a coconut on the back end. Why don't we spin the wheel of pairings to find out what is the ideal way of enjoying some Mount Crushmore? Every week when we celebrate the beer, we also like to pair it with one of 8 things. Although, of course, we can't have the 2 most recent options, which were, of course...
Last week, we actually double paired it, didn't we? TV, movies, and drinking companions. I don't think we did it intentionally. I think you just rambled so long. You covered like 7 categories.
That was the week before last. So why don't we say those were the last 2 options then?
Okay. TV, movies, drinking companions.
All right. So it's not going to be that. What is it going to be this week? Food or cuisine? It's been a while, old friend, but I'm finally ready to eat another meal. What would you like to be tucking into as you're enjoying a nice glass of Mount Crushmore?
Before I get into my answer, I would like to say that Mount Crushmore is a perfect Tubin beer.
Have you ever come across a beer which would not be a perfect Tubin beer?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to drink like a 15% barrel-aged Imperial Stout.
I don't believe you. I don't believe that's true.
I suppose there's a beer for every tube and river.
Yeah.
Yes, if we want to get philosophical.
For every tube, there is a beer.
This is a perfect tube. This is not what we're talking about. But I just want to say, if you're out there, if you have access to Mount Crushmore, you got a growler and a tube and a river. Let me just tell you, you're going to have a magical time.
Best enjoyed outdoors.
On a tube.
Food or cuisine?
I haven't spent any time thinking about that, to be honest. I've got no idea. What would you do? Like a donut? Can I say that? Like an inflatable one?
Giant inflatable donut. No, you can't. Although I am going to choose something which is perhaps slightly similar, and that is a plate of cured meats. I'm talking all of them. I want some salami. I want some other salami. I want some hard salami. Mm-hmm. I want all of the cured meats.
It's a theme here, yeah, all of them.
Just bring me all the cured meats, nice big plate, maybe a little bit of cheese, some mozzarella or something, nothing too strong. But I want to be outside in the sunshine, big plate of cured meats, enjoying a glass of this beer.
You're a man who generally knows how words are pronounced.
Correct.
I'm not this kind of man. What do you? I know the word. What do you call it? It's a big plate of like meats and cheeses and whatever, and everybody kind of digs into it. CHAR.
Charcuterie.
Charcuterie. Is that it?
Charcuterie.
Okay. Interesting.
Charcuterie, I think, is just the French name for a butcher who specializes in cured meats.
Are you really a butcher then? You're just a slicer, aren't you?
Maybe he's producing the other things.
Okay. Right. That's an interesting choice.
A charcuterie board.
Right.
Yes, but heavy on the cured meats, please.
Right on.
Maybe a few olives. I do like an olive.
Okay.
But all of that, very salty, very dry. A lot of flavors, I think, can be categorized into being either hot or cold flavors. And all of those cured meats, the olives, those are all hot flavors. Mm-hmm. Whereas the Mount Crushmore is a very cool and refreshing flavor.
Right.
So I think they would pair well together.
Sounds pretty good.
And where would I like to be doing this? Yep. You ask?
Yeah.
That was your follow-up question.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
On the deck of the Cow Mountain House.
Oh, okay.
Thank you for asking.
Nice, good work.
What would you like to be eating?
I would like to be eating this. I would like to hope that this is a pairing that has never been uttered in serious beer pairing circles before. I would like to drink Mount Crushmore while eating day-old cold pizza.
Okay. What kind of pizza?
It doesn't matter, really. It's a pizza you ordered while you were drunk. My point is, I feel like this beer is a pretty good hair of the dog beer.
Okay.
It's not too strong. It's got enough booze in it to take the edge off, but it's not too strong to where you're going to just like launch into another day of bendering. Is that
Yep.
the phrase I'm looking for here?
Yeah, please continue.
So yeah, if you wake up with a vicious hangover and you go, you know what, there's one way to solve this. I don't want to go too crazy. I don't want to drink, again, a 15% Imperial Stout. I've got tubing to do today. Right. Having a can or a glass of Mount Crushmore. And lo and behold, what do you have in the house? You don't want to make something. You don't have the energy or the brain power for that. But in your drunken stupor last night, you ordered a bunch of pizza. You ate half of it. And it's still there. It's cold. Cheese is congealed. But goddammit, it's delicious.
Are you going to pop that in the toaster oven?
Not at all.
No?
Absolutely not.
You want it stone cold?
Yes.
Apparently the way to do it is in a frying pan with a little bit of water.
I know this. And like when I have the wherewithal.
That's what I've heard.
That's absolutely the way to do it.
But I have a toaster oven and that works just great for reheating old pizza. We both chose circular foods today. Do you think there's anything in that?
Interesting.
Yeah?
There's something to this pairing business.
Maybe that's it. Maybe Mount Crushmore has a very round flavour, and that's what drew us both to these circular foods. Yeah. Still, I think you could have the crusts of the day-old pizza as the bread option with your charcuterie board. Okay. You? Like if you are suffering from that hangover, what better place could there be than in the shade, but outside on a sunny day, to Cow Mountain House deck, enjoying a few glasses of Mount Crushmore.
Second you were going to say tubing, but yeah.
A few glasses of Mount Crushmore before heading down to the river for your tubing session.
Right. Yeah, sounds great. That all sounds great to me.
We're back on board the tube. Now, as we mentioned earlier, Mount Crushmore is a mountain IPA. Did we get into that? What is a mountain IPA? I think we kind of touched on it.
I think you asked me not to, but I did anyway.
Yeah. We did kind of. But in doing so, we may have unearthed a few other things that might confuse some people. So, as you said, a mountain IPA is sort of the meeting point between a New England IPA and a West Coast IPA. So what's between the East Coast of America and the West Coast of America?
Racists.
The Great Plains.
Oh, yep. Sorry.
But, well, we were both right. But Great Plain IPA doesn't really make sense. So we move a little bit further to the left and get the mountains.
Flat IPA. Yep, mountain IPA.
Mountain IPA, that's why it's called that, because it's halfway between a New England IPA and a West Coast IPA.
Isn't that why it's called that?
Is that not why it's called that?
I don't think so. I think the brewery that first did it was in the mountains. It was.
So they were halfway between the East Coast and the West Coast.
Sorry, I feel like I forget these lessons every week. Let me do that again.
Go on.
The brewery that did it was in the mountains, and you can take that to the bank.
Trying too hard. Trying too hard. It's obvious. Let's step back though. New England IPA. What is a New England IPA? Is it different from a hazy IPA? Are those two things the same?
Well, you just explained what it was. It's hazy, but with a West Coast bitter bite to it, right?
Not the mountain IPA. The New England IPA.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I was not listening to you at all. That's why I was confused.
Good.
New England IPA is a hazy IPA.
Yes, those two are the same.
Those two are the same thing, yeah.
So lots of hops late in the boil to give it not very much bitterness, but a lot of juicy fruitiness. Lots of hops during fermentation, which is part of what creates the haze. And so, very popular style. It is hazy. It's non-see-through, much like this Uchu Brewing Thank You Dipper that we're drinking right now. But without a lot of bitterness to it, just a kind of juicy fruitiness. What about a West Coast IPA? What's that?
That's the kind of classic rise to fame style of IPA that brought IPAs to the forefront of the American craft beer experience in like the late 80s, early 90s, I guess? You're going kind of way back, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Bitter, hoppy bitter, dank IPA.
Yeah, your Sierra Nevadas, your Anchors, those kind of places. They were on the West Coast, which is also where the hops are, I believe. And so they just started putting more and more and more hops into their beers to see how bitter they could make them. And so your classic West Coast IPA has quite a dry body, probably quite clear, maybe a kind of slightly brown color, but strong and assertive bitterness. That's the classic West Coast IPA, isn't it? So the Mountain IPA kind of splits the difference between the two of those. It isn't, as far as I could tell when I was developing this recipe, it isn't actually a well-defined style.
Right.
For all the beer competitions and so on, it's just not a category. So at least for now, it kind of means whatever you want it to mean. But yeah, we took it in the direction of it being juicy on the nose, but bitter on the palate.
Yeah.
Any other interesting IPAs that you see around that may confuse people? I remember the Brute IPA having a hot moment. Do you remember those?
Is that the extremely dry IPA, right?
That's right,
and
yeah.
no residual sugars left over.
Brute, like champagne, right? Because it looked and almost tasted like champagne. They used enzymes to really dry it out, to sort of break up any of the long-chain sugars, the polysaccharides that could have been in there, to allow the yeast to ferment out basically all of the sugar and leave you with something that was very light in color, very light in body, sparkled like champagne, and hence was called Brute IPA.
Cold IPA?
Cold IPA. What's a cold IPA?
Cold IPA, I like to think of it like this. You have, if you think about, and this is rude, and not rude, but like a crude estimation. If you think about lager on one end and IPA on the other end, an IPL, an India Pale Lager, is something that splits the difference, but closer to a lager.
Right.
And
it's
a cold
a lager with lots of hops in it.
Right.
Sorry to jump in there.
That's okay. And a cold IPA is something that splits the difference, but is closer to an IPA. It's got an IPA nose character with the hops, but it's very dry finish like a lager. The body is lagery.
Yeah, and it might have that lagery bite to it, especially if it uses some lager yeast or something.
I mean, we could go on and on, right? There's milkshake IPAs. which have varying amounts of lactose in them to give them a ton of creaminess.
Right, that's true.
As I understand it. Some breweries specialize. Hudson Valley Brewing in New York specializes in sour IPAs as well. And there's been some really excellent examples of that coming out of like Totopia and West Coast Brewing and places like that in Japan. What else we got?
Do enjoy a sour IPA.
It can be really nice.
Yeah, it's a very varied and interesting style. And because IPAs are by far the most popular kind of beer on the market at the moment, a lot of times, I'm not going to say it's always a marketing gimmick, but breweries are looking for new angles on the IPA, new ways of exploring the IPA space, so to speak. And that can lead to really interesting stuff like the hazy IPA, which is a relatively modern invention, lest we forget. And then fun things like the mountain IPA, the cold IPA, beers that I really enjoy, but are all quite new and quite innovative and come out of the fact that IPAs are super popular. Hazy IPA is, of course, a very popular style. Do we have any in the fridge or the taps that you think people ought to know about?
Obviously on the taps we still have Hop Volcano for as long as it lasts, and we'll have Mount Crushmore on soon enough. In the fridge we have a couple great ones from Be Easy, a brewery that you and I both like quite a lot. There's actually a very interesting one in there, a royal milk tea milkshake IPA.
Okay.
I believe it is.
I'm listening.
I haven't had a can of that yet, but it stared me in the face, and I'm thinking I might need to drink one because that sounds really interesting. They also have a couple of others of their kind of standard hazies that we got in stock. So those are in there. We've got Teleportation Sweater in a really gorgeous can from Modern Times, known for both delicious beer and excellent can design. And then, a bunch of other stuff as well. West Coast Brewing is going to come in on Friday, and Verter is going to come in on Friday. So, yeah, I mean, if you like IPAs, we always have a good selection. We try to balance it with other things. We don't want to only be an IPA store, but we know what's popular and we know what people are looking for. So I think we probably have a pretty wide range of styles in general, but a wide range of IPA styles within that.
Yeah, and people do often, if they have questions about the fridge, those questions will often be, do you have any hazy IPAs? And it's nice to be able to point to some domestic and some international options for those. Teleportation Sweater is great. It's Modern Times, a West Coast brewery making East Coast beers.
Incredible.
Amazing the world that we live in today. That is about all that we have time for this week in Tachikawa. Thank you very much for listening. Daniel, thank you for joining me today. Stay safe, everyone, and we will see you again next time.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Talk to you next week.